other than saying class is over and go home, then I need to say something very brilliant so that I can engage you for the next hour or so or less. So I'm not going to say go home, sorry. But I do want to do a little bit of a kind of get to know who you guys are, and you will get to know me. And when Donna asked me to do this, it's not so much really about me, but what I want to try to do is give you guys an idea of how different positions and training can help you out and see if you're interested in it. As Donna said, it is a fascinating area of HR. Lots of great components of HR, but training is one of the most exciting, interactive, to me, it's one of the most passionate parts of the HR component that I love. So, you guys know each other fairly well. You've been in class, what, 6, 8 weeks? 4? Okay, but you kind of know one another maybe a little? Okay. I need someone to do well, first let me ask this. You've been to trainings before, and sometimes you are just bored out of your brains, right? Yes. And sometimes you can't hear, you can't see. There's challenges, obviously, when you go to a training. Can anybody give me some challenges of training? Comprehension, yes, absolutely.
Retaining all the information.
Right. Yeah, I mean, maybe you've had a long day, you've had a very busy day, you're sitting in here tonight, you're thinking about what you're doing tomorrow, what you're doing later tonight, all kinds of things.
The presenter in general.
Yes.
Some presenters are very monotone and just read out of a book and you never know what they're going to say.
I'm not that way. I hope not. If anything, I tend to go really fast, so that's one thing as a trainer that I have to work on. So.
I had a humanities professor like that.
How about people who don't want to be in your training? Is that a challenge?
Yeah.
Yeah, because sometimes people come to your training and their boss tells them they have to be here, or they're here because you're in college and you have to be here to get the credit, and sometimes you don't always want to be here. True? Fair statement? Yeah, okay. Sometimes though, when you go to training, you learn something. What I have encountered is a lot of times in business training that you have people show up in your classroom and they think they know everything. Anybody ever had that situation? Somebody at work maybe you work with? Yeah, okay. So I'm going to do a little demo. I learned this early in my training career, and it really had an impact on me. So I need someone to volunteer. Anyone willing to jump up and be my volunteer? Come on. You get free food. Come on up. It's not okay, if you don't volunteer, I'm going to pick on you. Okay, this is a very easy demonstration. I promise it won't hurt. Okay. This is a... Okay, come closer. I'm not going to bite. Okay, and if I ask you, would you like to eat the banana?
Sure.
Okay, so if you wanted to peel that banana, how would you do that? Got it? Okay, enjoy that banana. Thank you. Would you agree that 99% of the time someone hands you a banana, that's how you'd peel that banana? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, can you see my picture on here on my little guy up here? Who's this big bad boy? Gorilla. Where does he live? Jungle, somewhere, right? What do gorillas normally eat? Bananas. Do you think a gorilla is an expert on banana eating? Yeah. Guess what?
He peels it from the bottom.
He peels it from the bottom. Gorillas do not peel a banana from the top. If you watch a gorilla eat a banana, they peel it from the bottom. And every single time, that banana will peel, and you won't struggle like this poor young man did. Point being, sometimes you think you know stuff, sometimes you go to a training, sometimes you have people in your class, if you are a trainer, and they think they know it all, and you have to encourage them that sometimes there are different ways of doing things that you may not be aware of, and that if they're just open and willing to learn, they can learn something new, like how to peel a banana a little more easily. Okay, questions? No? Good. Sorry, I have to go back here and do this manually, because she says you guys don't have a clicker, so. Okay, let me give you an idea. Horseman, anybody know where that is downtown, big organization? Do you work there?
No, I had an interview there though.
Good for you. What kind of position?
Like a customer service rep.
Excellent. Great organization. Got my foot in the door there. Had several different jobs. Started out at a very entry-level clerical clerical position, researched a microfilm for people on their policies. Boring job, absolutely boring. But what I did do is I worked my way up. And I ended up working for the finance person, and so I split my time between finance and human resources. So part-time I was at HR, part-time I was in the finance department. And I really liked the HR side of things more than the finance, because finance was kind of boring as well. So I decided I want to kind of focus on HR, but it was only part-time. So I went to the recruiter at Horseman and said, how do I get into HR full-time? And one of the ways to do that was a training position. So I took over what is called a life and annuity specialist position. And I did both continuous and high leverage training, and the content was very heavily regulated. So think about an insurance policy that you get and all that language that's like 15 pages long. So I was training folks on all that language that's 15 pages long. And I'm telling you, it was extremely boring. Usually the class, well, before I get there, I'll tell you that here would be a typical question. So which of the following options, and you don't have to write this down, which of the following option positions would represent the most risk to a customer? The net debit spread, the net credit spread, the long call, or the short straddle? Does that not sound like very stimulating stuff to train on? There's an exam called, it used to be called NASD, the National Association of Securities Dealers, and it was heavily regulated also through the Security Exchange Commission. And in order to talk and train these, to the new agents that came in on the life and annuity products, you had to sit through this exam and pass it in order to do it. Highly complicated, very complicated exam. But it was a training position, it gave me great experience, it got my foot in the door, and it was a perfect job. Loved it, absolutely loved it. Unfortunately, this is what most of the people in the class looked like in these training sessions. I didn't take it personal, but very, very, very boring. Sorry, guys. There we go. Yeah, half my class would be asleep. It's life and annuity. It's insurance. But you had to do what you had to do to get it to be interesting so that you could train them. Because if someone went out and sold an insurance policy and said their kid had coverage until they were 25 and that was incorrect, then not only was the agent in trouble, I was in trouble because I trained that agent. But again, it was a foot in the door. Now, they had no training program. So I got a training manual that is about this big that you walked in when you took this job, and they basically said, memorize this training manual, and this is how you train the agents when they come in. Not very exciting. But it was, for me, it was fun. It was a job in HR. Absolutely loved it. Have a super boss, and great way to get your presentation skills and really kind of learn the ropes in training. So I decided, though, I wanted to be in HR, and I was not in HR. I was in the life division. So lo and behold, I get a phone call from my good friends at John Deere, big tractor company, a little bit bigger scale. John Deere had a life insurance company because when Farmer Joe bought the big combine, they wanted to make sure that Farmer Joe had an insurance policy so that if he kicked the bucket, the combine got paid off and the farm stayed in the family. So my guys would go out and sell insurance to the farmers. Again, not real sexy, the whole insurance industry. But what it did do is that it got me into HR. Now, when I left Horseman, I was making $19,000 a year. And I thought I was pretty big stuff. I went to John Deere and got paid $25,000. So automatically I got a pretty good jump in pay. And I did all kinds of basic human resource kind of stuff, kind of a generalist position. What they asked me to do was set up a training department. So that was one of the first things that I got to do. And I had a super, super boss who said, pretty much you can do what you want. We need the staff trained. You know, you're working for a Fortune 500 company, it's global, and they have 38,000 employees. Now, we were a small subsidiary of that organization. We were the life portion, not the whole, we were part of the big tractor company, but we were the life portion of it. But boss was very cool. Do what you want to do, within reason, of course. But here's what I want you to do is set up a training program. Boy, what a great opportunity. So I came up with all these ideas. Can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? Absolutely, go for it, whatever you want. So the sky was basically the limit. And while at Deere and Company, the training there was obviously heavily regulated again, because you're training folks to work on the production line to build those tractors and those combines. Where I was in the life division was there's a little bit more latitude. So I could create some programs on my own, dictate how long they were, the training programs. But the key was to get as many people as I could through our training programs so that they were all exposed to a certain kind of Deere way. Let's see. The extensive formal training program at Deere, very continuous, very high leverage. Extensive formal training, not kidding guys. Here would be an example. So, for every program that you taught for Deere and Company, you had to go through a series of 5 steps in order to become certified. So before you even roulette in front of the classroom, you had to go participate in the program. So we'll take something very basic like stress management. So Deere wants to offer a stress management class to program to their employees. So you had to actually participate in the program. You then had to go through what they call Train the Trainer program. So you worked with a certified trainer who would walk you through the program, help you learn the content. You had to then observe the program. Then you had to co-train with another certified person, and then you had to observe the training, be back in the back room observing the training once again. And so for every class that you wanted to teach at Deere and Company, you had to go through this process. And sometimes it was easily 6 to 8 weeks per class. I was certified in 16 classes. So it was a very long process, but extremely fun. They were good classes, they were exciting, people wanted to be there, they were very engaged, so it made it a lot of fun. The downside of that is after a little while, the good folks at John Deere said, you know what, we don't want to be in the life insurance business anymore, so guess what? We're closing the life insurance company. Now at this point, I was still the training side of things, but my boss, who was the director of HR, realized what was happening. She left and went to John Deere in the Quad Cities, and the president said to me, would you be willing to help us get through this transition? It's only going to be 2 months. Sure, what the heck, 2 months. It turned out to be about 2.5 years. So in that 2.5 years, I not only did all of the training, I also did all of the HR functions. So a lot of the stuff you're learning about in here, salary administration, comp plans, benefits, workers' comp, employee discipline issues, all that kind of stuff, performance management, I had to learn on the spot in no time flat. It was a great opportunity. Unfortunately, at the very end of the exercise, I had to fire all 250 employees, including myself. So, company gone, out of business. So, not so good. But good things can come out of not so good things sometimes. So, I left John Deere. The office was in Jacksonville, came back to Springfield. Now, Deere & Company has a very lucrative pay scale. To put it in perspective, when I started there at $25,000 a year and thought I was all that, by the time I left in 4.5 years, I was well over $50,000. So my salary skyrocketed in a short period of time because it was based on Deere pay scale. Well, I was doing an HR director job for a short period of time, but in order for me to come back to Springfield, I didn't have the years of experience to go into an employer and say, I need to be paid $75,000 because that's the job I've been doing for the last few years, because I didn't have not only the experience, nor did I have the college degree to back that up. So that's how I ended up at Sangamon State, which is now UIS. And one of the great things Deere did do when they fired all of us is they gave us a program where they provided tuition. So we all got to go back to school, and they paid for the entire program. So my entire master's program was completely paid for. Some good things come from bad things. Then I ended up at the Administrative Office of the Illinois Courts. Anybody ever hear of that? Yes? Yes. Yes. Thought it would be a good idea to get some state experience, because I've been at a Fortune 500 company, for profit, decided that maybe some some executive judicial branch experience would be good.
Culture shock.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Yeah, I had a staff of 19 and a $5 million budget, and again, was making pretty decent money, and I went to the administrative office of the Illinois courts and made $28,000 a year. I had no staff, was pretty much, had to get permission to get a pencil out of the supply closet. So huge, huge, huge culture shock. I mean, it was hard, but that's okay, because it was a job, right? Stick it out. Yes. Yeah. Okay, what happened there is I started in July as a professional HR kind of person, and then 3 months later, my boss left. So now I'm seeing a pattern. This is the third job that I've had where I've started and my boss left, and guess what? I got promoted. So within 3 months, I went from personnel rep or whatever my training title, whatever my title was there, HR administrator, to manager of HR again. And I'm going, geez, what's happening here? I keep, going to these jobs at one level, and then I get in, and 3-4 months later, I get promoted. This is working out kind of sweet here. But it was painful because it's a state agency, and it's very bureaucratic. It takes forever to get anything done. The morale sometimes was not so good. I had a great staff of 3 people that worked for me that made it all worth it. The only training experience that I really got to do there was actually training them, doing some on-the-job experience, training experience for them and for myself. But they weren't very, they did not embrace professional development a lot. Okay, not at all. So it was hard. That's okay. Because then, what I thought was the hardest job ever, I went to the hardest job ever. That would be this job. So I decided after 2 years at the state that I would quit my job and stay at home. Because being a full-time mom just sounded like the right thing to do, right? Yeah. Toughest job ever. No job description, no breaks, no lunch, no salary increases whatsoever. No career advancement, because once you're a mom, you're just a mom. I guess the only next level would be grandma, but I was not ready to go there. But there were a few good learning points there. So I was very involved in my participants to get them to buy in, so it didn't matter what the task was. I had 2 very engaged children. I tried to give them positive feedback from the training environment. I tried to focus on the reason for the training, so if you learn to use a sippy cup, then you get something, some great reward in the end. And we always celebrated our victories. What I also did in that short period of time was I decided I don't want to lose my job skills. So I did things like volunteering. I worked exclusively with the Girl Scout organization. The KC that's out on, I'm trying to think what the name of the road is out there, the West Side KC 364, or Isles Avenue. Yes. They needed help with recruiting. It was opening for the first time. They had no staff. They had hired a manager to oversee the pool, but they didn't know how to hire people. So I helped them with their hiring, got all of the lifeguards and concession workers on board. I helped them with the performance review process. I helped them with employee discipline situation. Anything that pretty much came up that was HR related, they would call me. And it was fun. Got to work with a lot of young kids, and it was exciting, and I really, really enjoyed that. The other thing I did during this time is I volunteered to be on the school board for my son's school. So even though I'm not working, I don't want to lose my skills. So I'm trying to keep up, keep myself engaged, and do what I can so that someday when I go back into the business world, then I am employable. Volunteering is a wonderful, wonderful way to get your foot in the door places. Okay, so here's this new company. I knew a lady, named Terry Cavallo, who called me and said, I need someone to come in for an hour or 2 and file and help me finish some projects. Would you be willing to do that? I'll pay you $25 an hour. Okay, I'm a stay-at-home mom. I have 2 kids. I'm dying with Barney. Sure, I'd love to come in and talk to adults. When do you want me to start? Okay, Monday, March 17th. Work for you? Perfect, I'll be there. Monday, March 17th, I go in, very excited, very eager. guess what? She said, I got good news and I got bad news. What do you want first? What's the bad news? I'm leaving. What's the good news? You can have the job if you want it. Okay, I was supposed to work for 3 hours on Friday afternoon and make $75, and now you're telling me you want me to take this job on a full-time basis? Yeah, I don't think so. But what I did do was negotiate some contractual work. So I said, okay, fine. I don't want $25 an hour. I want a little bit more because now I've got the upper hand in the situation. I only want to work when I can, so when my kids go to bed or on weekends when I have some free time. And she said, sure, absolutely. So I'm back in HR, I'm doing all the fun stuff, compensation, performance management, some training, but the environment's a little bit different. This is a statewide training and resource center. That's what these people do. That is their entire purpose. They train preventionists. So it's a little bit of a different kind of training. It's not, here's some customer service training, here's some stress management training. This is very high level, very intense. The term that we use in the substance abuse prevention world is called evidence-based. Anybody familiar with that term? Yeah, leading experts in substance abuse prevention, training, and technical assistance. Started as contractual, worked contractual for the first full year, and then my boss said, I want you on board full-time, please come join our agency. I don't want to. She said, you name it, you tell me whatever you want. Whatever you want. Okay, you get that opportunity, what do? You go home and you make out a long list of everything you want, right? Because she just said, name what you want. So I did. I went home and I made out this outrageous list. I only want to work from 9 to 2, 4 days a week. I want this much in salary, I want this much in my 401k plan, I want this, I want this, I want this. Thinking that there's no way when I go into the office on Monday and I hand her this list, of course what's she going to say? No. And what did she say?
Yes.
Yes. So now I'm working full-time, but I'm only working from 9 to 2, 4 days a week, and making a pretty decent salary, doing all of HR. Now, that was July 1st of 2000. And between being the manager of human resources until last Friday, I assumed all of human resources, all of the administration, I assumed communications, and I assumed government relations. So my little HR contractual job of, $35 an hour, about 10 hours a week, turned into a full career where I had input and could touch so many different parts of the organization. Now again, the one that I was most passionate about was the training component and the HR side of things. I liked all the other parts of it. So what did the organization do? Well, it's probably not real sexy for you guys, being young college students, but basically we are in the business of educating folks on drug and alcohol prevention. So there's 5 areas. There's something called substance abuse prevention and treatment, something called Department of Corrections, a program called FASD, SAD, and SAC. All of these programs were geared towards training individuals in those different areas. So DOC is the Department of Corrections. So if you know anyone that works in a correction facility, maybe it's an officer, trying to think of what some of the other job titles were there. If you work in an Illinois DOC training prison correction facility, then you probably went through one of our programs because they would train folks on drug and alcohol prevention. They were the only adult group that we worked with. The rest of them were mostly kids. FASD is something called fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And basically if you are of childbearing age, so all you women in here, and if you're thinking about having kids, you do not want to drink alcohol because if you do, that alcohol goes straight to your fetus and it has an impact on it. So what we would do is train folks on this, go out into communities, work with WIC centers, and educate women on the programs. It is unfortunately, the #1 cause of mental retardation that is totally preventable. SAD is Students Against Destructive Decision, and SAC is Student Assistance Center. again, not real exciting topics. So, you know, you go to a networking event, and the number one thing, you go out to network, you guys go maybe to a SHRM event or something, and what's usually the first thing you have in your hand? Cocktail? Yeah, you work for a training prevention, substance abuse prevention agency, and you try to go out and get people to understand what you do. And as adults, we're all legal, and it's okay that you drink, but it's kind of a challenge to explain to folks that you work for a prevention agency. Anyway, great organization. So, earlier I mentioned something called evidence-based programs. And anyone familiar with the term? If you pursue training, it's something that you may or may not run into. And basically, the easiest way to think about it is, I couldn't go out at Prevention First and create a training program on my own. It had to be what we call evidence-based. So there had to be empirical data that showed that the training had an impact. The true definition of programs are considered evidence-based if there exists good evidence that they have a positive impact on the outcomes that they are designed to change. So I couldn't go out and create a customer service training program for this organization because it wasn't evidence-based. So all the programs had to go through this rigorous process in order to be considered. They had to be certified through an organization called NREP, which is a national registry. So it was a little bit more tailored to the industry. But then now, you may hear this term in other areas of human resources. So your recruiting should be evidence-based. A lot of times you might hear it called best practice. Does that ring any bells for anybody? Best practice on recruiting, best practice on your salary or your comp plan, best practice on your EEOC program, whatever it might be that you're working on. All of our programs had to be best practice or evidence-based. From there, okay, so we are a statewide, not-for-profit training and technical assistance resource center. And unfortunately, when I started there 14 years ago, we had a good-sized budget. I want to say it was around $6 million. But if anyone, unless you've been hiding under a rock for the last probably 2 years, and if you've lived in the state of Illinois, you realize the financial situation that the state is under, right? Yes. Well, guess what? Not-for-profits in the state of Illinois didn't do so good. So unfortunately, we had a lot of cuts over the last couple of years. What it meant is we really had to evaluate how we were delivering our product, because we had people come into the classroom just like you all are here tonight. And when the state cut the funding, they said, no travel, no training, no travel. And we said, well, wait, they gotta get trained. We trained them to go out and do their jobs. Okay, fine, figure out a new way to do it. And so we did just that. We did a lot of video training, we did a lot of web-based training, but it was a great opportunity for us to look at how to get things done. It can't be classroom-based training anymore because the dollars just aren't there to pay people to travel. So we had to get very, very creative. We did a lot more self-study based trainings. And then we also had to look at the culture of our audience. So we have a lot of folks that are working in Chicagoland. In fact, the biggest bulk of our customers are in the Chicagoland. So we had to, while we were doing, as Donna said earlier tonight, when you think about designing a training program, sometimes it's, you've got auditory learners, you've got kinetic learners, you've got visual learners. You have to think about all of that. And when you think about that, you've got someone who's very visual, but you're doing a web-based training program, that can be a challenge. So you have to become very, very creative in how you try to keep it fresh and keep it so that folks are still going to learn and get the gist of what you're trying to share with them. Anyone familiar with what's called the ADDIE model? Okay, instructional design. Does that ring any bells to anyone? Nope. Best advice I'd give to you tonight. Who likes to write? Any writers in here? Yes? No? Maybe? Pen and paper? No writers? Nothing? Best job you could get. Instructional design people go out and they create training programs. Sounds kind of simple, right? You go in, you sit down, you meet with the company, whether it's let's say it's a welding shop, and you go in and you meet with the guy and he says, I gotta train these welders on how to weld stuff. but I don't know how to do it. So as an instructional design person, you're gonna go in and you're gonna sit down and you're gonna write a manual for Bob the welder on how to weld these two pieces together. And you're gonna make anywhere from $100 to $200 an hour doing that. It's pretty good money for an HR job. If you like to write and you wanna merge a great field in the training arena, is look at instructional design. Because there are a few of them, and there are a few people who actually can write. And I don't mean to sound critical in that, but we have moved away from the process of writing so much that for a lot of people, they just don't write anymore. So if you can put together a sentence and have a verb and a subject, and some proper punctuation, and you like training, then I would highly recommend instructional design as an area if you might be interested in it. Because there are a few of them. So the going rate for, my going rate for an ID person in Chicago could easily be $150 an hour. One of the things they use in this process is called the ADDIE model. And basically you have to sit down and you have to do the analysis of what it is. So if you think about Bob the welder, you have to look at what really needs to be done. He needs to weld these two parts. How's the design in that process put together? You also look at the development of it. You do the implementation, and then you come back and you reevaluate and you do your evaluation. It's a 5-step process. It's very well known in the ID world. We always had to use the ADDIE model, no matter what we did. If we wanted to do a training on how to use the telephone, we had to use an ADDIE model.